Inorganic ions. So this is the last topic in the biological molecules topic of the A-level biology syllabus in AQA. So look at the specification from the AQA website. So inorganic ions occur in solution in the cytoplasm and body fluids of organisms, some in high concentrations and others in very low concentrations. Each type of ion has a specific role depending on its properties. Students should be able to recognise the role of ions in the following topics: hydrogen ions and pH, iron ions and the components of hemoglobin, sodium ions in the co-transport of glucose and amino acids, and phosphate ions as components of DNA and of ATP. Now, we'll look at a few more ions just because there is a common essay question at the end of A-level that just asks you to describe the role of ions in biology. So having that extra bit of knowledge is always useful. So first of all, hydrogen ions or H plus ions. So pH is calculated based on the concentration of hydrogen ions or H plus. The more H plus present, the lower the pH level and the more acidic the environment is. Enzyme-controlled reactions are affected by pH because of these H plus ions. So you can actually find the pH or the hydrogen ion concentration using the equation. So rearranging the pH equation, what is the concentration of hydrogen ions in a solution with a pH of 3.67? So the equation is pH equals minus log 10 H plus. So then if you rearrange that, you get H plus equals 10 to the minus pH. So you go 10 to the minus 3.67 and you will get the concentration of hydrogen ions. You can see here that 3.67 would be somewhere between times 10 to the minus 3 or times 10 to the minus 4. Okay, now looking at iron or Fe2+. Hemoglobin is a large protein that carries oxygen around the body in red blood cells. It's made of 4 polypeptide chains, each with an iron in the centre. The iron is a key component that binds to the oxygen in hemoglobin. When oxygen is bound, the Fe2 plus ion temporarily becomes an Fe3 plus ion until oxygen is released. Calcium ions or Ca2 plus. As calcium phosphate, it provides a hard, strong, insoluble matrix in bones and teeth. It's needed for blood clotting. As calcium pectate in plant cell walls, it forms a matrix which cellulose fibres lay. And it's involved in the transmission of action potentials from one neuron to another. Sodium ions or Na+. This helps glucose and amino acids cross the cell membranes. So a molecule of glucose or an amino acid can be transported into a cell across the cell surface membrane alongside sodium ions or Na+. This is known as co-transport. Potassium or K+. This is constantly pumped into cells by active transport in the exchange for sodium ions, and it's important in the transmission of nerve impulses. Magnesium ions or Mg2+, forms part of the chlorophyll molecule in plants, and it's important for the absorption of light energy to drive the reactions of photosynthesis. Chloride or Cl- is moved out of the cells lining the lungs and the digestive system to provide a low water potential outside the cell, causing water to follow so mucus is not thick. And it's actually this mechanism that is affected if somebody has cystic fibrosis. Nitrate or NO3- is used to produce amino acids and proteins from the carbohydrates made in plants by photosynthesis. Phosphate or PO4-3- is used in the production of nucleic acids, RNA and DNA, and production of ATP and phospholipids which are important in cell membranes. So in summary, inorganic ions occur in solution in the cytoplasm and body fluids of organisms, some in high concentrations and others in low concentrations. Each type of ion has a specific role depending on its properties, and you should be able to recognise the role of ions in hydrogen ions and pH, iron ions as a component of hemoglobin, sodium ions in the co-transport of glucose and amino acid, and phosphate ions in components of DNA and of ATP. So describe the roles of iron ions, sodium ions and phosphate ions in cells. Iron ions, hemoglobin binds or associates with oxygen, or hemoglobin transports or loads oxygen. Sodium ions are involved with the co-transport of glucose or amino acids. The sodium moved out of the cell by active transport creates a sodium gradient or diffusion gradient, or affects the water potential or osmosis. Phosphate ions affect osmosis or water potential, joins nucleotides in phosphodiester bond or in the backbone of DNA or RNA in the nucleotide. It's used to produce ATP. Phosphorylates other compounds, making them more reactive. It's hydrophilic, or it's a water-soluble part of the phospholipid bilayer or membrane. Okay, so that is the ions topic.